My name's Eugene Worley, and along with my wife Glenda, we have spent nearly 50 years in ministry in Ethiopia, Norway, the UK, and in the US. I'd like in these podcasts to share with you some of our experiences from those years. One of the greatest adjustments we had to make returning to Ethiopia in 1998 was life on the street. The streets of Addis Ababa had a life of its own. The streets of Addis were a mixture of people, animals, and taxis. You had to take your life into your own hands and pray that you would not hit anyone. I suppose the taxis were the biggest annoyance. There were the blue minivans and the small blue taxis that weaved in and out of traffic, and you never knew when one was going to pull over to pick up passengers. The blue minivans were always packed with people. There were also the city buses that were always packed, and because of their sheer size, dominated the roads. In addition to the taxi traffic, there were the animals. Farmers from the countryside would bring their goods to the market on donkeys and then would return home. They also brought their cattle to the market, driving them by foot. This was very stressful, as you never knew when one of the animals would dart out into the traffic. Perhaps the biggest difference from our western cities was the number of people, especially young men just standing around not doing anything. I didn't understand that until I realized that these young men had come to Addis looking work, and there was no work to be found. In fact, Addis Ababa had an unemployment rate of 50%. However, some of the more enterprising young men went into the shoe shine business. They would get a shoe shine box, and for 12 cents or less would shine your shoes. Still others would offer to guard your car while you were in a shop, and were happy to get 12 or 15 cents from you. Then another large number would find things to sell, such as magazines, newspapers, chewing gum, and packages of pocket-sized Kleenexes. I tried to help these young people as much as possible. In fact, occasionally I would buy the 10-pack pocket-sized Kleenexes and then would give them back to them to resell. One night when I was coming home from class, a young man came up to my car selling some things, and he told me that he was trying to earn money for his school fees. In fact, he had a report card showing his grades, so I was pleased to help him. A week or so later, he came up to my card and gave me a card. It was a thank you card. I was so impressed because I'd never experienced that before. But by far, the largest group of people were the beggars. They're found at every intersection, but particularly around churches. The reason for this is both of the main religions, the Orthodox and the Muslims, teach that giving to the poor is one of the good works they must do in order to go to heaven. Needless to say, this was one of the hardest things we faced coming back into the country after so many years. There had always been beggars, but the famine of the 70s and the 80s, causing people to leave the countryside and come to the big cities, only increased the numbers. At first you wanted to help everyone, but knew it was not possible. And in fact, we soon realized that some of them were professional beggars, or they were being used by someone who forced them to turn the money over to them. I remember one Sunday coming home from church and stopped at a shop near our house to buy bananas and bread rolls. There was a little guy who came to our window begging, and we offered him a banana and a roll, but he refused it. We realized that he was sent out to beg and had to give money to whomever he was working for. It broke our hearts because we could tell he was hungry. We gave him a burr. At that time, that was about 12 cents. and then he was happy to take the banana and the bread roll. There were other situations where a family with a handicapped child would take that child on the streets to beg. You would often see a woman with a baby on her back begging, and the sight of the baby would make you want to give. In time, we realized discernment was important, and our prayer was that we would help those who were truly needy. The scenes that I have just described to you are not too different from that which Jesus spoke of in Matthew 9:36. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. I must confess I didn't always have the compassion Jesus had, but kept reminding myself that they were people in great need and for whom Christ died. This explains why Jesus also said in that same chapter, "The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest." Ethiopia truly needs more laborers. It has a population of 118 million people, with 60% of that number under the age of 25. They're also one of the poorest countries in the world. There was, however, another group of people who were opportunists. And if they saw something they needed or could use, they would take it. You always had to be on guard, which is why you would be willing to pay someone to guard your car. We had a funny incident happen to us once. We had some missionary friends who were expecting guests to come, and they asked us if we had any extra blankets. Glenda told her we had some, but we also had guests, and when they left, she would wash them and send them over. So I threw the blankets in the back of my minibus, and on the way over, I had to stop at a busy section of town. I had parked and was talking to some of the young men from the driver's seat, and was unaware that some of that same group I was talking to had opened the sliding window in the back and had taken my blankets. It was not enough to lock the doors. You had to make sure your windows were locked. Yes, there are all kinds of people on the streets. And as the gospel song says, people need the Lord, and they often need a helping hand. I've heard it said that the gospel is one beggar sharing the good news with another beggar. I saw this literally take place one time when a beggar had been given some bread, and they in turn shared that bread with another beggar. The reality is that we're all beggars, and until we acknowledge that, we cannot receive the bread of life. The good news of the gospel is that which an Old Testament prophet said, "Ho, every one that thirsteth, come ye to the waters, and he that hath no money, come ye buy and eat. Yea, come, buy wine and milk without money and without price." In our next podcast, we'll tell you more of our work in Ethiopia in 1998 and 1999.